Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining in today. Welcome to Edureka. Today we have an interesting topic. So the topic of today's webinar session is on how you can faster your coding with loops in Java programming language. All right, guys. So let's get started with today's agenda. Now, as part of today's agenda in our learning session, so we'll look at the conditional statements in Java, how to write a conditional statement. We'll also look into the loops in Java. So coming to loops, we have for loop, while loop, do while, as well as infinite. So we'll look into all these kinds of loop, and we'll also look into a demonstration as well, how we can implement these kind of statements in Java programming language. Let's get started, and let's start by working on this conditional statements in Java. Now here, when we say conditional statements, so conditional statement is a statement which describes the compiler to carry out the execution of a certain statement in a program on the basis of the outcome of the condition. Now here inside my conditional statements, we have like ternary operator, we have if, we have else if, we have else if ladder, we have nested if, we have the break, and we also have switch. So these are the various conditional statements that we have in Java programming language. Okay, so we'll look into it in a hands-on part. First, let's have a high level understanding on these conditional statements. And then moving on, so the next one that we have is on loops. Okay, so we have loops in Java programming language. Now when I say loops, loops is a statement which will help me to execute a statement or a group of statement as per my requirement. Now here when we talk about this loops, okay, so we basically have two important kinds of loop. One is for loop and the another one is while loop, and the another type we also have that's called as do while loop. Okay, so these are the various loops that we have in Java programming language. Now using this loop, guys, I can execute multiple times. I mean, I can execute a group of statement multiple times. Instead of, let's suppose I'll give you an example. If I want to print something 10 times, now without the loops, yes, without the loops, I'll have to write the print statement 10 times. Now with the help of the loop, I just have to type once and I can loop it with the help of my looping statement, and I can ensure that it is looped multiple times. So this is a special thing about my loops in Java. So let's look into each and every type of loop. So here we'll start with for loop. Now in the scenario of this for loop, here I can define, yes, the loop that whenever I say this for loop, so this loop for loop can define a precise loop which has initialization, condition, and the increment or decrement. So while mentioning my for loop, I'll mention all these things. So we'll have the initialization, we'll specify the condition, we'll increment or decrement. So we'll do all those things and we'll specify all these things while writing this for loops in Java programming language. Okay, so this is how an overview of this for loop would look like. So we'll begin and then we'll start with the initialization. And once the initialization is completed, we'll check for a condition, whether the condition matches or not. Now, on the basis of this condition, whether it is yes or no, we'll execute the statement, and after that, we'll perform the increment or a decrement. Okay, so this is how we perform the for loop. So this is a basic flow for a for loop. And if I talk about the advanced for loop, okay, you can think of this advanced for loop as a loop inside a loop, which we also call it as a nested loop. Okay, this is one more scenario of this advanced for loop where I'll check, I'll see if I have any elements. If yes, I'll do the initialization, I'll perform it. If there is no elements, then I'll just stop it. So this is a kind of an advanced scenario. You'll get the better understanding as we progress in the hands-on session, guys. The next kind of statement that we have is called as nested for loop. Now, in the scenario of this nested for loop, what we will be doing is we will have one for loop inside another for loop. Okay, so we'll have one for loop inside another for loop. So this is a scenario of my for loops, that is the nested for loops in Java programming language. And then we have a while loop. Okay, so in the scenario of this while loop, I'll keep on iterating it and I'll keep on executing a statement and a group of statement on the basis of a condition. Okay, so this is how it would look like. So here what we'll do is we'll specify the while loop. Okay, it executes itself repeatedly until the Boolean expression condition is true. Okay, so here just to give you a perspective, okay, what is the difference between while loop and a for loop? Okay, I'll just give you a common example that I would give in every class. See, when we talk about for loop, okay, if I talk about my for loop, so in that scenario, the for loop is going to run a specific number of times. So if I want to give a very simple example, I can say that, so this for loop, okay, so this for loop is like running a park. Let's say you go for a jogging, okay, and if you decide that you are going to run for 10 times, so it's like it is predefined. You're going to run that park 10 times. So that is an example of for loop. Now, when I say while loop, in the scenario of this while loop, so you doesn't know, like you don't know how many number of times that you want to execute. It's like I'm going to go for jogging. I'll do as many rounds as possible to the park until I get tired. So that is a scenario of this while loop. So difference between while loop and for loop. In for loop, I know how many number of times the statements will get executed or group of statements, but in case of while loop, will not know at start. So because it keeps on iterating it until the condition is satisfied. So this is a scenario of this while loop. Okay, so this is how the while loop would look like. So we'll begin, we'll take a decision, we'll check the decision, and once we check the decision, like we'll execute the group of statement. Okay, so this is a scenario of this while loop. And we have one more type of loop that's called as do while loop. Now this is a scenario of this do while. Okay, so in the scenario of this do while, it's very similar to while loop, but I'll perform the do operation and then I will check the condition. Okay, I'll perform the do operation first. I'll execute it. My first iteration will execute it. Okay, then I'm going to check my statement. I'm going to check my condition. So this is a scenario of this do while loop. Okay, so if I want to show you a flow chart, so this is how a flow chart of do while loop would look like. First I'll begin, I'll execute my statement or a group of statement, and then I'm going to check a condition. If the condition is true, then I'll again execute the group of statement or a single statement. So I'll keep on iterating it until the condition becomes false. When the condition becomes false, I'll exit that do while loop. So this is how the execution of do while loop would look like. Okay, now to give you an animation, okay, so how does the difference between do while and do while? So while not edge, you're going to run. So if it is not the edge, then you're going to stop right before the edge. But in the scenario of this do while loop, it's like first run, then check not edge. So this is the difference. This is the clear animation which depicts the difference between while loop and do while loop in Java programming language. Now, when it comes to learning Java or any other programming language or learning any technology, it's very important that you take up the learning path which has been created by experts, where you'll have the chance to learn this technology from the experts who not only help you how the concept is works, but also you get the professional understanding as how it is used at the industry level. Now, in order to help the learners, Edureka has created a structured learning approach. So this structured learning approach for the Java certification training looks like this. So in the structured learning approach, this is a learning approach where it is recommended by industry experts, and this certification path has gone through multiple iterations to ensure that you will be able to use it in your day-to-day life once you learn it at a professional level. So first, you'll be learning the Java programming language and the introduction to Java. And then you'll look into the data handling and functions. Okay, and then you learn about the object-oriented programming in Java. And as you progress in the module 4, you learn about servlets, packages and multi-threading. And then you'll also learn about Java collection, JDBC, Hibernate, and this is followed by in the module 9 and 10, you'll be learning some of the advanced stuff like Spring and Spring Ajax and design patterns. Okay, so all these things which will help you to progress in your Java learning journey is already included as part of your certificate training course by Edureka. Next, moving on, we have an infinite loop. Okay, now here when it comes to this infinite loop is actually a situation where the condition of loop fails and the execution persists until you stop it manually. So this is a scenario, guys, where the condition is simply is true and it keeps on iterating it. Now you have to manually stop it. So this is a scenario of infinite loop. Okay, so this is about the condition statements and loops in Java programming language. So let's now perform it in an hands-on manner so that you'll get the better understanding. I'll open my Eclipse. So I have already written some code. I've already created the class. So we'll look into it in detail. Now I'll be sharing each and every code. Okay, so this is how the code has been written. So I've just started by creating a class. The class name that I mentioned is Java Loops. Okay, it's just a class that I mentioned. Then public static void main, and here observe. I have initialized the values of age to be equal to 5. Okay, next here I have implemented my if else condition statement. So this is called as if else if and else statement. Okay, so what I'm currently doing over here is I'm saying it as if, okay, and the condition is age is greater than 18. If it is greater than 18, I'm printing it as age is greater than 18. Okay, now if that condition fails, then here I've mentioned as else if. So else if means, so if this condition fails, check one more condition whether my age is less than 18. If yes, I'm printing it. So to print, I'm saying it as system.out.println. So I'm saying it as age is less than 18. And if both the condition fails, then I'm executing a default statement which says as age is 18. So let's execute this code. So we'll be able to see the output that says as age is less than 18. See, age is less than 18. Now let me modify. So I'll mention the age as 25. Now if I execute this, so this time I'll get the output as age is greater than 18. Now let me change it to 18 this time. If I change it to 18 and if I execute this, see, I have the output that is says as age is 18. This is how we can create and we can write the if else condition statements in Java programming language. So the next statement that we are going to look is called as switch statements in Java. Now we use this switch statement to select one of the many code blocks which I want to execute. So the syntax that I'll be writing is something like this. Okay, so let's do one thing. So I'll say public static void main. Okay, so I'll just try to copy it. Okay, now inside this I'll mention like this. So the way that we would specify switches, we'll write as switch, and inside the parenthesis we'll have to specify the expression. Okay, now inside this switch expression I'll have to mention what is the case. Okay, I'll have to mention what is the case. Okay, so we'll write as case. Okay, and then we'll have the case x. Okay, then we'll get some more, we can write some more code block as per our preference. So this is how we would specify the classes, and we'll write it, guys. Okay, now let's take up an example. So what I'll do is I'll write something like this. So I'll initialize my value of int. Okay, I'll say int. Okay, so I'm initializing my value of day to be equal to 3. And what I'll do is inside my switch, I'll mention it as day. Okay, this is the expression that I would receive. Then I'm going to mention the individual value. So case 1, okay, I'll write as system dot out dot print ln. I'll just print a line which says as Monday. Next, I'll copy this. We'll replicate it multiple times. Okay. So I've just modified the code. Okay. So I have made use of switch and case. Okay. I'm mentioning the respective days. Okay. Now what I'll do is once this is done, we'll also include a statement that is called as break, which will stop the execution once this print has been executed. So I'll include the break. See the output that says it says Wednesday. So I have initialized the value, and on the basis of that value, the respective case has been selected, and we have the output that says is Wednesday. Now if I change this to 2, so if I execute it, I'll get the output as Tuesday. So this is how we can implement the switch statements in Java programming language. So we have now looked into the switch statements in Java. Now let's proceed and let's look into the next statement. So the next statement that we have, I think, yeah, we'll look into this example. This is called as for loop. Now in the scenario of this for loop, so this is a very simple implementation of for loop. Now while specifying a for loop, we'll have to mention the for statement. Okay, and then once we mention the for statement, what we can do is, I'll do one thing. Let me just comment this out. Okay, so we can comment any line by saying it as double slash. Okay, so this is a for loop that I have created. So this for loop, it says for I is equal to 1. This is my initialization, and this is followed by a condition, and after the condition we'll have to do the increment or decrement. So these are the 3 parts of my for loop. So while defining the for loop, it's very important that you mention these 3 things: initialization, condition, and increment or decrement. So the initialization is I'm initializing the value of I to be equal to 1. Then condition, my condition is I is less than or equal to 10. And increment is I plus plus, so increment the I by 1. Now here I am printing the value of I. Okay, I will be 1 and I will be incremented. I becomes 2, I becomes 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. So this is how the statements will be incremented in the Java programming language whenever we are using this for loop. So I'll execute this code, guys, so that you'll get the better understanding. So once I execute this code, you'll see the output that says as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, which means it executed this for loop, that is this print statement, 10 times. So it executed 10 times. So this is the usage of this scenario that's called as for loop. Now here, while writing and while working, we also have a statement that is called as break statement. Now here I'm using the break statement. Okay, so I'm actually using the break statement here. The break statement says if value of I is equal to 2. Okay, if my value of I is equal to 2, add the break statement. So what happens in this scenario? If I execute this, I'll just get the output as 1 and 2. The reason is when the value of I becomes 2, I'm exiting this overall for loop. Hence, it just stopped the execution for me. Okay, so this is how I can combine my for loop and the break statement and control how these statements to be executed in a specific order. And apart from that, in our slide, we have also seen a scenario of the nested loop where I have one loop inside another loop. To demonstrate this is another code. I have a for loop implemented. Inside this, there's one more for loop. So I'll remove the comment and observe. Inside my one loop, I have my another loop. Okay, now observe, I'll print both I and j, and I'm going to stop the execution when I becomes 2. See? So 1 1 1 1 2 1 3 2 2 1 2 2 2 3. So execution has been completed from the inner loop, and once the value of I becomes 2, I just exited this overall for loop. So this is the working of nested for loop. Okay, moving on, the next loop that we'll see is a while loop. Now while loop is a special kind of loop where it executes a statement or a group of statement until a condition is satisfied. Now this is an implementation of while loop. So here I have initialized the value of I to be equal to 1. Okay, next here inside this I have mentioned my while loop. The condition says I is less than or equal to 10. Okay, so I is less than or equal to 10. Now if this condition is passed, I'm getting the output that says as print I. Okay, so here we are printing the value of I over here. Okay, so I'm printing the value of I and then I'm incrementing the value of I by 1. So this is how I have mentioned the code. Now if I execute this, see, we have executed this loop 10 times. The reason it got executed 10 times because I have initialized the value of I to be equal to 1 and I'm incrementing it. So overall, it is executing it after it completes the execution. I mean, after it is executing this loop 10 times. So once the condition becomes false, then it is stopping the while loop execution. So this is the implementation of the while loop. Now moving on, the another exciting statement that we have is called as do while loop. Now this is a separate class that I have written, which is called as do while. And here, observe guys, here I have initialized the value. First we have do. Okay, first we have do and we have the execution and then I have a while statement. So this is the difference between while loop and do while loop. In the scenario of while loop, I'll specify the condition and then the statements will be executed until the condition is false. And here in the scenario of do while, I'll first execute the statement and then I'll check that condition. So this is a scenario of this do while loop. Okay, I'll just execute this code. So here it says I plus plus, first I'm incrementing the value of y, and then there's a condition which checks whether it is divisible by 2. Okay, if it is divisible by 2, I'm using the continue statement. Now if I use this continue statement, it means do not it's going to stop the execution of my current loop. Okay, my current iteration is going to stop and then the system moves into the next scenario. Okay, that is what it does. Now if I execute this, I'll get the output as 1 3 5 7 9 11. Okay, so this is an implementation of do while loop including the continue statement. If I use this continue statement, it is going to skip current iteration, skip further execution in current iteration. That's what it means. Okay, skip further execution in present iteration and move to next iteration. This is the working of this do while loop. So I'll execute it again. You'll be able to observe. See, so this is the implementation of do while loop. Okay, So I hope this gave you an overall idea in today's session as how to implement condition statements and how to use the loops in Java programming language. With this, we come to the end of today's session, guys. So thanks a lot for joining in today's session. So I look forward to seeing you next time. So take care and see you guys.